face-to-face meetings are critical to build trust, and without them, we will lack of the most critical value of an ISAC, that is trust.
Welcome, everyone, to the Industrial Security Podcast. My name is Nate Nelson. I'm here with Andrew Ginter, the Vice President of Industrial Security at Waterfall Security Solutions, who's going to introduce the subject and guest of our show today. Andrew, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Nate. Our guest today is Aurelio Blanquet. He is the Secretary General of the EE-ISAC, which is the European Energy Information Sharing and Analysis Center. And he's going to be talking about the good work that they're doing at the ISAC, at the center, and about more generally what is an ISAC and how does it work.
Then here is your conversation with Aurelio.
Hello, Aurelio, and welcome to the podcast. Before we get started, can you give us a few words of introduction? Please, tell us a bit about yourself and about the good work that you're doing at the European Energy ISAC.
Hi, Andrew. Thank you for the invitation, and it's a pleasure to share with you the ISAC. So, I'm the Secretary General of the European Energy ISAC, which calls for Information Sharing and Analysis Center. And previously, I was the first president elected from the members community in 2015 when the association was launched, and I chaired the association between 15 and 18. And previously, I was director and board advisor of an European energy utility, in this case, in particular in Portugal, ADP, where I was responsible for the ICS and cybersecurity strategy and implementation. So I work with the topic of the ICS for almost 40 years and cybersecurity since the very beginning, where the cybersecurity was not a known word around the community. So about the role that I'm performing, what I do is, of course, assure the presentation of the ISAC to the community, namely to aspiring members. Of course, we have lots of work with meetings and contacts with C-levels, partners, and stakeholders, namely European associations, including the European Commission. And of course, I also attend and I'm speaker at events and conferences namely on energy digitalization and on cybersecurity. One sentence everywhere where information sharing can play or plays a relevant role in Europe and I would say even worldwide. So in broad terms, if you want to know more about information sharing and how it can work on behalf of a more cybersecurity world, namely on the energy sector, we are ready to step forward.
We're talking about the European Energy ISAC, Information Sharing and Analysis Center. I've been part of other ISACs, and the model that I have in mind for an ISAC is sort of a weekly phone call where managers of security operation centers are on the call, or senior people from security operation centers. They exchange actionable intelligence. They exchange IP addresses that they've noticed are attacking them. They exchange file checksums from suspicious attachments that they've received. They gather all this information, they feed it back into their intrusion detection systems and their security information and event management systems. This is is this what the European Energy ISAC does, or are you doing something else?
We do something else, starting by the feed of information. So what we intend to do and what we are doing and promoting inside our community is to feed an information sharing portal. And the idea is to assure that each member can, in a real time basis, share their own incidents, namely the ones related with malware. So we have an European platform for malware information sharing, and the idea is to have the feed of this platform embedded in our members' internal processes, including a synchronization between the members' platform if they have a private sharing platform and this European platform. This way, we are able to have, in an almost real-time basis, a full information data set that allow us to have a broad vision about incidents within our members community and broadly at the European level. So the first thing that we do is to collect this information. To make this information actionable, we perform a second task. What we do is to vault this information to assure that it's trustable information and is not a false positive information. And this is the first challenge, or the second challenge we have. The first one is to feed the information. Second is to have a right balance between the voting process and the timely information that is made available in platforms. If we take too much time to vote, the information lacks timeliness, and if we want it to be very timely, maybe it can be not a vaulted information. So this is the second task that we perform. And last but not least, what we do is to use this information in order to produce a threat intelligence reports that are made available inside the community, and that corresponds to an analysis that help the members to take more supported, actionable information, which means that each member can use the information that is feeding in platform on his behalf, and the information is updated, and also the reports that came from the treatment of this raw information that is stored in the platform. So I think it's, from my perspective, the three main levels that the ISAC and the community works.
So, Nate, real quick, what I heard there was that the ISAC does have a function that is focused on actionable intelligence. It's different from the ISAC that I described, my previous experience in a different ISAC, in that it's more, it sounds like automatic. Instead of a call once a week where the information is exchanged verbally or pasted into Teams, the information is made available in a real-time portal. There's a validation step that goes on. People have access to the intel as soon as somebody enters it and it's validated. And there's reporting that goes on. So that that sounds useful. So that makes sense. I mean, I've had a look at your website. You have a risk management white paper there that anyone can download. You're focused on events that shut down operations in Europe. And I am reminded that at the time we're recording this, just a week ago, there was an announcement of an event in Denmark where firewalls on critical infrastructures, including, I understand, electric utilities, were breached by an accused nation-state adversary. Can you talk about the Denmark event? Where does that fit in sort of your scale of attacks on the power grid?
Well, that's a very, very good question. I think both types of incidents are, by different reasons, very, very relevant. Of course, when you have a huge impact on people or on the economy, this is an incident with immediately critical consequences. And it can be a power outage, but it can be you can have a necking situation like you talked about in Denmark, and we had also one in Portugal in 2022 that didn't have any impact on power. Nevertheless, it means that the companies faced a vulnerability, and this vulnerability was exploited. If it didn't have any consequence, it could have two main reasons. Because the company were able to defend itself and control the incident and have an effective response, or maybe even the attacker was not intending to make harmful, but was just testing. And it also happens quite often. In any of those situations, an association like the ISAC plays a critical role. If you have an attack like we had in Ukraine a couple of years ago, it will be more than useful to have a community that is able to support you and help you in the incident response, and sharing with you what kind of the different kinds of best practice that you can perform to overcome the incident.
The latest numbers in the 2023 threat report on OT cyber incidents show that the threat environment has changed fundamentally at the beginning of this decade. OT cyber attacks with physical consequences have changed, from a theoretical problem to a very real problem, more than doubling every year. The new report is focused on deliberate cyber attacks in the public record. These are attacks that cause physical consequences in process industries and discrete manufacturing. Most of these attacks are ransomware, though the fraction of hacktivist attacks is growing. And the report's appendix includes a complete list of all cyber attacks since Stuxnet that meet these criteria. To see how today's OT cyber threat environment has changed, I invite you to download the report, a joint effort between Waterfall Security and the ICS Strive OT Incident Repository. You can download the report at waterfall-security.com/2023-threat-report, or just go to the resources menu at the Waterfall Security site and click on white papers and ebooks.
So this Danish incident that you guys are referring to, for listeners who aren't fully caught up, it occurred in the spring of last year, starting with a firewall vendor called Zyxel. I don't know if it's Zyxel or Zixel, Zyxel, which in late April of 2022 revealed a pretty serious command injection vulnerability. It was given a 9.8 out of 10 CVSS score for those of you who follow along with that. And shortly thereafter, attackers utilized this vulnerability in their firewalls to attack the Danish energy sector pretty broadly, because the firewalls were the thing separating the internet from control systems, protecting safety critical equipment. It became a very serious incident. I believe, according to what I'm looking at now, 11 energy companies were compromised pretty much immediately. 5 more were attacked but managed to stop the attackers. It took as the sector cert described it, entire night to remedy the issue, but they did successfully protect all of the systems until 11 days later, when more attackers came back. This time, instead of the publicly revealed vulnerability, there were 2 zero-day vulnerabilities of the same severity affecting the same devices. The attackers seem to have thrown the book at the energy companies this time, and a couple of pings back to attacker-controlled servers revealed that they might have had to do with the Russian group Sandworm. So I believe at the end of the day, all of the utilities and related companies were safe, but it did sort of very obviously demonstrate the threat here.
That's right. I mean, I was in Denmark when the story broke at an event doing a book signing, and had opportunity, at the event. The organization Sector, the Sector CERT that reported the incident, gave a presentation. I had a chance to sit down with the technical lead from the CERT afterwards. And so, all of that's true. A fine detail, in my understanding, the firewalls were not between the internet and the OT systems. The firewalls were the internet-facing firewalls for the business. They were the firewall that protected the IT network. And so the Sector CERT is a little bit unusual. They have technology that is, getting a copy of all the packets that are being exchanged and inspecting them for attack signatures at the internet interface of these critical infrastructure utilities, their members, not at the IT/OT firewall, where most people think that you would be, monitoring for attacks. They're monitoring for attacks on the entire organization. And they found these attacks. It was one of their people that identified the initial intrusion, and they said, really their role is to detect and inform. So they called the affected organizations, said, "You're under attack. Here's the details," and a great many of them were small, and didn't really know how to deal with the intrusion. And so, in spite of the Sector CERT not primarily, being an incident response organization, not really having a flyaway team, they said, "Look, this is Denmark." They got into a car, they drove out to these facilities, and walked them through the process of turning off the firewall and updating the firmware and activating internal incident response to see if anything had been stolen or sabotaged or anything. So they were involved in the incident response as well, even though that officially isn't what they do. So good on them.
Yeah, that is a pretty crucial correction that you made to me. Although the report, the language in the report is a little bit broad. They say, "We have experienced that Zyxel is used to a large extent to protect the critical infrastructure, and we know that many OT environments..." Wait, here we go. The attack groups had a publicly known vulnerability that they could use to penetrate the industrial control systems, and the primary defense against that happening was precisely the equipment that was vulnerable. So maybe they used the firewalls to get into the IT networks, and then the IT/OT defenses are sort of taken as a given. Do you have any detail about exactly like how their network was mapped out, or not so much?
No, I don't. I missed that in the report. I'm going off my memory of the conversation with the folks at Sector. They've promised to come on a future episode, so let's get them on, and we can dig into the details with them instead of relying on my fallible memory here.
It also occurs to me as we're talking about this, this was a critical vulnerability in what appears to be a relatively popular firewall product that might be found anywhere else in the world. I know that there was a gap between the 25th, when the vulnerability was revealed. We're not talking about the 0 days here. That's another matter. And then May 11th, when the attack occurred. Is it just that everybody would have patched in that time that I haven't heard similar stories from other countries? Andrew, do you know if this initial vulnerability was exploited elsewhere?
I don't know that. I asked Aurelio that, and he basically said, he if he had information, he couldn't share it with me. They have strict rules about non-disclosure. Um, and but to me, it's an interesting question. I would like, if someone digs up an answer, I'd very much like to know, because what we have here is excuse me, a Danish organization, the Sector Cert, reporting an attack on Danish critical infrastructure using this firewall as an attack vector. As you point out, the firewall is used very widely. Did anyone else get hit and they're just shut up about it? That would be useful to know. If nobody else got hit and the bad guys used this firewall as a vector specifically to attack Danish critical infrastructure, what does that mean? I don't know. I'd very much like to know.
Or alternatively, others were hit. And as we know that there is some evidence here that there's a state-sponsored actor involved, maybe they just didn't know.
Yeah. So, like I said, I would like to know. I hope that more information comes to light over time. I'm going to change topics in a moment, but before I leave your information sharing system, I know that the information in there is confidential, but is there anything that you can tell us sort of in terms of the volume or the quality of information that you have in there that you're tracking?
Just to have a small idea, when I look to the information gathering in our sharing platform from January to July, and I didn't update it with the figures from October, but we had something like 60,000 events corresponding to 5 millions of attributes and 2.5 millions of correlations among those cybersecurity events and attributes. If we look to the organizations that feed the platform and we make an average, each organization in average feeded something around 150 events in the platform. This means that if an organization is not part of a community with an active and very proactive information sharing attitude, the organization is able to deal with 150 incidents, but is only able to take decisions and to make action based on the information delivered by 150 security incidents. If you broaden your interest, you are able to take the same action based on 60,000 on the information of 60,000 events, which means that the scale is much higher. And if you go up in your information scale, for sure, the ability to take a better decision will be much higher.
And changing gears a bit, I understand that, yes, you folks are focused a lot on incidents and information sharing. That's what, ISAC means. But you're also talking to governments, you're talking to the commission. NIS2 is the big news from the commission that all of the governments are acting on. Can you talk about NIS2? What does it mean to your members? And, is there, I don't know, advice that your members are giving the member states? What's happening with NIS2 in the organization?
Well, the NIS2, as well as the very new network code for cybersecurity that was closed for comments last Friday, midnight, last Friday, means for the association two things. As all the regulation that comes from the Commission is always a concern and an opportunity to have a voice on the content of the legislation, whatever it is. Focus on the NIS2. What this means is that looking to the energy sector in Europe and looking to the NIS, the NIS2 broadens the accountability of the companies that were already covered by the NIS, and brings to the compliancy requirements a new group of companies that were outside the NIS. And when we look to those companies, we see small companies. And this is a very, very big challenge, not for the members of the association, but namely for the non-members of the association, because those companies, and because they are small energy companies, they are not so well prepared as the big players are in this cybersecurity challenge. So until now, they were outside the regulation. Now they are inside, and they must be as compliant as the big ones, of course, with some nuances and with different impacts in terms of fault. But nevertheless, this means that there is an opportunity to join forces instead of fight alone in this world. And we recognize that the NIS2, from this perspective, makes sense because, as we talked before, the European energy system is an interconnected system, which means is as strong as its weakest link. And it's easier to attack a couple of 10 or 20 small energy companies and bring problems to a full energy systems than to try to attack a big company that is well prepared and trained to better response. Maybe is not going to be as effective as she would like, but is for sure better prepared. And so NIS2 brings a new level of responsibility for the energy companies and a new challenge, namely for the small companies that are not so prepared. So for sure, it will be time to start thinking collectively and not individually. Other way, they will be non-compliant with NIS2. Looking to the big companies and to all companies covered by the NIS2, and for the first time, NIS2 recommends cooperation as a pillar for cybersecurity. So NIS2 incentivizes European companies to cooperate on cybersecurity. And this goes straight to the DNA of an association like the ISAC. We are sharing information in order to be able to cooperate on actions and to be more effective on the decisions each member can individually take. Another point that NIS brings, and it's a challenge as well as an opportunity, is to make responsible the managing of the companies for assuring the training to assuring the resources for implementation to implement mitigation measures, which means that once again it's an opportunity to share plans and strategies among companies in order to have an underlying approach on those challenges. So I would say that those 2 points are the main news that the NIS is bringing to the table, and will be compulsory from next October 2024.
So, Nate, just a word of background here for people who aren't necessarily tracking what's happening in the European Union. NIS 2 is the new, I don't know, I'm not even sure what it is, directive from the union, from the Commission, to everyone about cybersecurity of critical infrastructure. It is not in and of itself a regulation. Okay, NIS 2 does not say these power companies have to do those things. NIS 2 is a requirement. It orders the member states to pass regulations. And it says you have to take these factors into account when you decide which of your power providers and other critical infrastructures are critical. You have to pass laws that have these kinds of characteristics. And, it's called NIS 2 because NIS happened a few years ago, was the same thing, ordered the member states to pass laws. And so things are a little bit different in every member state. And the new regulations, the new NIS 2 has got broader strokes. As Aurelio said, more smaller utilities are coming into scope in the very broad brush of NIS 2, and of course in the individual national regulations that will come about because of it. The other one, the Network Code for Cybersecurity, this is something that's newer than NIS 2. It's still being created, but in my understanding, it's analogous to North American NERC CIP 012. The NERC CIP family of standards has, 14 standards in it. 12 is, one of the things 12 talks about. They use very technical terminology in 12, but it's loosely interpreted as requiring encryption between control centers. The control centers are the places, the systems that control large chunks of the power grid. And when they talk to each other about how much extra capacity they have, how much power is flowing through them, all this real-time communication, CIP 12 roughly requires encryption. I'm guessing the same thing is coming in the new law in Europe, because increasingly the European power grid is integrated. There's electricity being sold from one nation to the other. Every nation tends to have its own control center. And of course, now they're all increasingly talking to each other to facilitate these international flows and exchanges and, purchasing and selling of power. So it's a complicated space. So NIS 2 is going to change a lot. I mean, member states are passing their regulations right now to comply with the directive. Is the EE-ISAC involved in, creating or influencing this regulation?
You talked about the NIS 2, but as I said previously, last week, the public discussion on the Network Code for Cybersecurity was open for discussion. And when we look, and it's also a very important piece for the cybersecurity wall in Europe. And the association also was able to comment and to deliver a position paper to the Commission. And as well as it did with the NIS 2, the association has usually three main concerns, if I may say. When we look to the legislation, and usually we start working within the working groups that are responsible to write the legislation. But when we look to the final documents, what we look for is to check the consistency of the legislation. and the consistency as at the document level. For instance, when we look at to the NCCS, we saw some inconsistency, some potential inconsistency on the way the document describes a cyber incident or a cyber attack. And this is something that cannot be misconfused. And so what we do in in this case is to comment and ask the Commission to make clear the concepts and the terms that they are using on the legislation that usually is already complex enough that risks to be misconfused. The second one is about efficiency. And about efficiency means avoid redundancies and leverage on existing work or existing technology. So the same way that NIS2 was built up from the NIS, the NCCS, when one was published for public comments, was written in a moment where other pieces of legislation was already in place. And we must assure that is not going to invent or reinvent the wheel and put other rules besides the ones that are already in place or are going to be in place, and risk to impose double lines of action that will be useless and inefficient. And the third, last but not least, is the time to action. What we try to see is and comment is if the time to make it possible is suitable or not. And for instance, going back to your first question about the NIS2, one criticism that most of the sector puts is that it will be very difficult, if not impossible, to assure that companies are ready for NIS2 in October of 2024, if we think that most of those companies now covered are small, they don't have resources, neither financial nor in people, don't have mature teams in terms of cybersecurity. And even if they have the money, they are going to face the shortage of skills that we are facing in Europe and worldwide when we talk about cybersecurity, which means that they are not talented enough in Europe to assure the resources we need to fulfill the NIS2 requirements. But this is a challenge. This is an opportunity for cooperation, and it's true that we need to move forward. Otherwise, we will be as weak as the weakest link, and it will not conceivable in European terms.
Okay, so sharing actionable intelligence, working with government authorities to try and influence legislation so that it doesn't mess things up too badly with inconsistencies and whatnot. I understand as well that the ISAC hosts face-to-face meetings. In those meetings, I mean, what do you accomplish? What do you do face-to-face that doesn't happen through your portal and through these letters that you send to governments?
Okay, thank you for your question. It's a quite relevant one. We can split the face-to-face meetings in two types. The first one is face-to-face meetings with members. And face-to-face meetings with members are mostly to share non-disclosable information. There is no way to share non-disclosable information unless you make a face-to-face meeting, because this information usually is even not written. The second one is with non-members. can be prospect members or intending members. And in this situation, the face-to-face meetings is critical to build trust. This information sharing is only possible if you do it in a trustable community. And a trustable community is more than a group of people that you know by name and by affiliation into an organization. Is people that you need to know in the eyes, and with you can identify yourself, and at a level that allows you to share and and have back uh, useful information to yourself. And so I would say that face-to-face meetings for members are critical to keep the trust and to share non-disclosable information to non-members. The face-to-face meetings are critical because are the first seed to build trust. And without them, we will lack of the most critical value of an ISAC, which is that is trust.
Well, this has been good. Thank you, Aurelio, for joining us. Before we let you go, can you sum up for us? What should we be taking away about working with an organization like the European Energy ISAC?
Okay, thank you for your question, Andrew. Well, I would say that there are four main takeaways that I would like to share with you. The first one is that active information sharing in a trusted community is a very powerful pillar, if not the most powerful pillar, in a successful cybersecurity strategy. The second one is that capabilities are, by the end, the outcome of knowledge and experience. And through an association like the ISAC, when you share knowledge and you share information, you are able to improve both knowledge and experience, and get more capable to face the cybersecurity challenges. The third one is that, almost as a consequence, is that through cooperation we will for sure reach farther than if we stay alone in this challenging cybersecurity world. And last but not the least, what I can say is that if someone that is listening and is working in the energy sector and is not yet member of the European Energy ISAC, or even in Energy ISAC in his own country, don't wait more and join us. And this because it's more than ever time to act together. So look our website, get in touch, and we'll be more than pleased to get you on board.
So, Andrew, that was your interview with Aurelio Blanquet. Do you have anything to take out our episode with today?
Yeah, Aurelio pointed out sort of three priorities for the ISAC, active information sharing and developing capabilities, knowledge, experience. He pointed out that cooperation makes us all stronger. And, NIS2 is requiring cooperation among critical infrastructures. And NIS2 is not saying you have to go join the Energy ISAC, but it's saying you need to cooperate. We need to be stronger. And here's an opportunity to do that. I mean, it's a truism that our enemies cooperate. Nation states cooperate against us with their allies. There's a dark web where criminals cooperate, where they share information, they buy services from one another. We need to do the same. We are stronger together. They are stronger together. We need to be stronger than they are. So it all makes sense to me.
Well, thanks to Aurelio for speaking with you, and Andrew, thank you for speaking with me today.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you, Nate.
This has been the Industrial Security Podcast from Waterfall. Thanks to everyone out there listening.